Story 1. When I see people I have not seen in a long time and think they look old, I realize it is because I am old too. Story 2. When you look at new artists or athletes, they may stop looking like adults and start looking like children to you. Story 3. You eat a handful of potato chips, and now you feel unwell. Story 4. Recently, I felt a sudden pain in my back after stretching my arm. Story 5. I fell off my skateboard, and it hurt more and for much longer than it used to. My body doesn't bounce back like it did when I was young, dumb, and full of cum. Story 6. My nose hair grew so long that it became itchy. I never had this problem until I reached my mid-30s. Story 7. I am drinking tea this evening and looking forward to going to bed. Story 8. I now get annoyed at teenagers. Back when I was a teen, I always wondered why adults were angry at us. Now I get them laughing out loud. They were right. Story 9. Work responsibilities. I see children playing cricket, riding bikes, and eating popsicles on their way home, and I remember doing the same things as if it were yesterday. I'm still young, but somehow it feels different. When I see posts that say, if you remember this, your childhood was awesome, I feel a little old thinking the shows and anime I watched as a kid are considered classics now. Even the Diwali holidays do not feel the same anymore. Story 10. Generation Z is far enough removed from me that nothing they do makes sense, and I do not care anyway. Story 11. Not knowing who the stars, musicians, or trends are and not caring. Story 12. A young person is confused when I talk about doing schoolwork before the internet existed. For example, if you needed to write a report on a topic, you would have to hope the library had a relevant book and that you arrived before everyone else. It was uphill both ways in the snow. Story 13. I just turned 40 and have noticed a few things. My body aches. My back, neck, and legs hurt. Simply sitting at work did not used to do this to me. I used to be carefree, but increasingly I feel anxious, especially about my health, so I have been getting checkups and eating better. I am annoyed by modern things. Don't get me wrong. I still feel like a kid at heart, and I am a geek who loves virtual reality and playing with artificial intelligence, but I cannot stand social media influencers, how all videos are now vertical, and how captions used to be for the deaf but now appear in every video in giant, colorful letters. I feel old. Story 14. After I slept with your mom, I found out she was my age. Story 15. My family has a gene that increases the odds of various autoimmune disorders. I have psoriasis. My father and sister have arthritis. My joints had been swollen and painful. It seemed certain I had the gene and arthritis. I had accepted it and searched online for information on how to manage it. I took a genetic test and had x-rays of my joints. Turned out I did not have the gene. The doctor said my joints were completely normal and there was no indication of even the slightest arthritis. I asked why my joints hurt. The doctor said, "You're just getting old. Things hurt for no reason. You should get used to it." Story 16. Nothing, really. I find my 40s to be a strange decade because it is obvious I can still do the I have a young body things. Pull consecutive all-nighters, overexert myself without consequence the next day, or drink like a fish sometimes and shrug it off the next morning. I do those things not that often, but when I do, the consequences are still negligible. At the same time, I am aware that middle age is approaching, like you have to turn 50 eventually. I do not feel old, but I am aware my days of being young are running out. Story 17. Having to Google current memes. I genuinely have no idea what anything means or why it is funny. Story 18. I've had sciatica for about 6 months after having a baby. Hobbling around like a little old lady makes me feel very old. Story 19. I do not know whether I am using emojis correctly anymore. Story 20. I went to the dentist today. They said I need 2 more crowns. I am only 50. To be fair, I did not get the last 2 they recommended either. Now 4 teeth have green highlights on the dentist screen indicating that crowns are recommended. Story 21. I do not enjoy most modern music. Much of it feels surreal like Grandad Simpson. Story 22. I realize I get genuinely excited about appliances, furniture, and sales on kitchen tools. I catch myself saying, "This is such a life upgrade." And I know I have officially entered adulthood. Story 23. I have no idea what music Generation Z and younger people are listening to, and they do not recognize any of the music I listen to. Even some younger millennials and I have very little overlap in our tastes in music and popular culture. When I try to play a song that was considered really cool in the late 1990s and early 2000s for someone under 32, they act like it is hokey, outdated stuff. Also, watching the fashion cycle bring back old trends is interesting because younger generations act like it is new, even though we all stopped wearing those styles years ago because they were considered tacky and outdated. I cannot wait until Generation Alpha starts parting their hair on the side and calls Generation Z old for still using middle parts. Story 24. I am running out of excuses that life will make sense when I get a specific state of being or item. Story 25. Grand Theft Auto 5 came out when I was 11 years old and playing my Xbox 360. Grand Theft Auto 6 is finally coming out next year and I am 25 now. Story 26. I can feel the passage of time weighing down on my mortal form. My back hurts. Story 27. Something somewhere on my body is almost always hurting. Story 28. My back hurts like never before, and my knees hurt when I jump from a high place. I do not understand some memes and sayings, such as 6'7". What are you talking about? I still do not get it. Story 29. When I look at my skin, it is becoming looser, older, and thinner. Story 30. When the athletes you grew up watching now have children who are professional athletes. If I ever hear the name Vladimir Guerrero II in Major League Baseball, I'll know I'm a dinosaur. Story 31. I do not see people my age in their late 50s on television. With a few exceptions, the vast majority are in their 20s to perhaps their 40s. Story 32. When I go on the same rants my dad does, I stop and tell myself I have become my father, and it happens far too often. Story 33. I am 67 and finding out that people I went to high school with have died. Story 34. Currently in bed at 9:12 on Friday night and could not be happier. Story 35. Children have not heard the music I listened to when I was younger. Story 36. I look at myself in the mirror and glance at my gray hairs. I'm not too sure. Story 37. Most of my high school friends now have children who attend the same school. Story 38. I do not understand slang. When I browse Reddit, I have to search for some phrases. Story 39. Aches and pains. An older man grunts when getting up from the couch. His hair is graying. Story 40. Whenever we get to the music round in trivia, I do not know any of the songs. Story 41. People are romanticizing the years when I was a full-blown adult and they were teenagers. Fucking stupid 2016. Story 42. When it takes me a full 30 seconds to find the record button on Microsoft Teams, I feel like I might as well be in a nursing home. Story 43. I shop for houses and enjoy looking at interiors. It excites me to think I will earn a lot of money and live the way I want. Story 44. I do not understand videos where people put eyes and a mouth on an inanimate object to make it look like it is talking. Story 45. I no longer really understand most youth slang or recognize many young celebrities. Story 46. Ha. When you look forward to going to the urologist because a female clinician will touch your penis to apply a little lidocaine before the doctor inserts a camera into your urethra. Story 47. There seems to be a lack of insecurity and embarrassment within me. I'm not sure if that's age, but it's a great feeling. Story 48. Whenever my children reach a significant milestone, I notice it. My oldest is about to graduate from college. Yikes. Story 49. Kids these days. Also, the Grammy nominees that were just released. I don't know 90% of them. I'm 42. Story 50. Seeing nostalgia reels on Instagram from the 1990s and 2000s. People I went to school with a decade ago already have a second or third child. Story 51. Basically everything, including that to most people on Reddit, I am beyond old. In the past 2 years, I lost the 3 people other than my children who were closest to me. I just turned 60. So even though I work out regularly and I am in the best shape of my life, I am automatically undesirable, undateable, and unfuckable. Right now, my life consists of going to work, doing my swimming workouts, and hiding in my house making art. That is life, I guess. Story 52. I just assembled a coffee table from Amazon. My back hurts now. Story 53. They keep telling me which parts of my body are barely working now. Story 54. My knees. I'm in my early 30s and my mobility is the same as I remember at 19, but my knees are creaking. When I move from sitting to standing, I find myself audibly groaning and grunting. Story 55. It has been 13 years since the last Grand Theft Auto game. Story 56. I played poker at the local casino in Las Vegas yesterday, and all the older players at the table were younger than me. Story 57. Has very strong political views and cannot tolerate the opposition. Story 58. I am starting to notice that my parents are getting older and taking on more responsibilities. Story 59. 1. Not wanting to drink so much that I get a hangover. 2. Taking 2 days to recover if I get a hangover. Story 60. I started feeling old when the music I listened to in high school became classic rock, and the music I thought of as classic rock became oldies. I don't even know what the songs that were oldies when I was younger are called now. Story 61. People in venerable positions who are younger than I am. Doctors, priests, politicians, and others. Story 62. I keep reading glasses in every room, so I always have them at my fingertips, and yet I still end up wearing a pair on top of my head and another hanging from my collar. Story 63. I graduated last spring, but it was crazy to see the 7th graders at my school labeled class of 2030. Story 64. I read People magazine at the hairdressers and did not recognize anyone. Story 65. The consequences of my own actions and inactions. I have never taken care of my body. In many ways, I have abused and neglected it. I have never been in shape. I have always been somewhat strong because I am a bigger man, and I have been inside a gym now and then. Maybe I was a little delusional in my late 30s. Now in my 40s, there is no way to ignore it. I am slow, weak, easily winded, and overweight. The realities of my age are hitting me as well. I know 45 is not old, but I was 30 just a couple of weeks ago. I realize now that I never really had a goal or a plan beyond graduating college and pursuing a career, and it shows. Story 66. I wake up in the morning, and my whole body hurts. Then I drive through the university, and everyone looks like babies. Story 67. When you see someone doing adult-level things but you only remember them as a kid. I saw a people you may know suggestion on Facebook for the youngest sibling of a family friend from long ago. My first thought was, why is she drinking wine in that picture? She's too young for that. Then I realized she is probably in her mid-30s now. Seeing younger celebrities being sexualized is uncomfortable. For example, Steve Irwin's child wore eyeliner in a Dancing with the Stars promo and the comment section was thirsty. He is still so young. Even though he is 21 now, he still feels like a child. Stop. Story 68. The music I loved as a kid is now considered dad rock. Story 69. I look out my window at every little thing. I still feel young at 36, but my body is what really makes me feel old. Story 70. I cannot push through and handle everything during an illness anymore. Younger me would have worked through walking pneumonia in the winter. Now I cannot even haul myself to my work from home office. Story 71. I am reading music obituaries, and they are my generation or younger. Story 72. I go to bed early and hate parties that start at 9. Story 73. I notice how seldom I see Reddit accounts older than mine, which is 14 years and 7 months. I have seen a few 14-year accounts from time to time, some 15-year accounts, and once a 19-year account. It makes me feel old. Story 74. I fell asleep on the couch the other day at about 10:30 in the evening. When I woke up, my arm hurt for 3 days. So whatever you want to call that. Story 75. Realizing that 45 to 50-year-old men can be more interesting than 20-year-olds. Story 76. Getting off the couch. To be fair, I did a CrossFit class before work and some lifting after work. Story 77. I turned 80 in August. Am I getting old? No, I'm just getting older. Story 78. I cannot get hired anywhere because employers prefer to hire younger people for lower pay, and I have back problems. Story 79. The sounds I make when I stand up after sitting for a while. Story 80. I find myself getting annoyed at kids' new slang. I'm only 22. Story 81. People born when I was 20 are legal adults now. My doctor is younger than I am. Story 82. Professionals I talk to are a few years younger than me. They just have their lives sorted out. Story 83. I saw a costume at Halloween and thought it was a stickman. My boyfriend corrected me and said it was from the movie Tron Legacy. I have never seen it. I am 31. Story 84. Now, when I go to music shows and concerts, I bring a mini preparation and care kit. In the past, I only brought myself. Story 85. My neck makes a concerning, crunchy sound every time I turn it a certain way. Story 86. I hurt my ankle while sleeping and walked with a limp for 2 days. Story 87. The skin on my arms is getting loose. I hate that. Story 88. I am realizing that many things I like or used to like are more than 20 years old. Story 89. Realizing that 2001 was more than 20 years ago makes you wonder where the time went and how old you are. Story 90. 2 things. 1. Pain. I am constantly in some degree of pain. I am currently dealing with a small tear in my labrum. Unfortunately, the scheduler has not called me back. So I am on day 4 of calling and leaving a message with her at 9 a.m. every day. 2. Increasing irritability and a greater desire to be around people less. This has led me to require 5 to 6 backpacking trips per year to get away from people. Story 91. Living 30 minutes outside a major city and avoiding events cuts down on traffic and parking fees. I used to drive 2.5 hours each way every other weekend to attend concerts or festivals when I was younger. I partially blame coronavirus disease 2019, but I finally moved closer to the city and now go out only every few months. Story 92. Not understanding, as an 80-year-old, the meaning of you only live once. Story 93. I mentioned to my nephew that I have a certain album on cassette tape, and he did not know what I was talking about. He looked at me with the most blank stare, so I had to explain to him what that was. Laughing out loud. Story 94. When you have to scroll a long way to select your birth year to enter a website. Story 95. You do not want to do stupid things anymore because it is too much work. Story 96. One of the first things that made me feel old was quick response codes. My phone cannot scan them, and I cannot find an app that works. I am not replacing my phone. This is the first technology that has stymied me. Story 97. Are you experiencing a rapid increase in soreness after normal activities and a greater need to get up and stretch, especially in the knees? Story 98. When an emergency or something serious happens, everyone looks to me as the adult. Story 99. The 1984 World Series was the first one I watched when I was 12 years old. Story 100. People around my age are dying. I also see attractive women I know I am too old to be with. Story 101. The rise of new music artists I have never heard of, as if they appeared out of nowhere. Story 102. I keep seeing videos where people ask current high school students what year they were born that makes them feel old, and the answers are usually 2003 or 2005. Story 103. My younger cousins are in high school. Here in Australia, we do not have middle school. Story 104. I feel that many recent innovations are nonsense, especially artificial intelligence. Story 105. I am 42 and have a daughter who is 3.5 years old. Everything I do with her makes me feel like I am getting old. Story 106. I feel sad more quickly about ambitions I did not fully achieve. Story 107. People 20 years younger than I am are complaining about being old. Story 108. The Grammy nominations were just announced, and the vast majority of nominees are artists I have never heard of. In the past, I might not have listened to some artists, but I would at least know who they were. Story 109. I don't know actors or pop stars anymore. I barely recognize anyone nominated for awards, and I haven't seen their films. Story 110. Not to sound creepy, But when I look at someone in their 20s and am not attracted to them, they seem like children. Story 111. You do not know who the hot or new famous people are, and you do not care. Story 112. Just turned 68 and can't do what I used to do 10 years ago. Last summer, while watering my tomato plants, it felt like an elephant sat on my chest. Good thing I wasn't at home by myself. I always joked about doing the Fred Sanford thing. You hear that, Elizabeth? I'm coming to join you, honey. Now early morning and late evening are the times to do physical activity in the heat. Story 113. Every morning I lie in bed and think, I don't need to rush anymore. Story 114. I am 62, but I do not feel that old. I just get frustrated with myself when it comes to technology. Luckily for me, I have two tech-savvy daughters who help me out, laughing out loud. Story 115. I have back pain. Not from anything strenuous. Simply sitting and browsing the internet for a while causes lower back pain. I suppose years of bad posture while working at my computer are catching up to me. Story 116. At 61, my hair is almost all white with a little black, but I feel no different than at 40. The mirror tells a story. Story 117. I have a favorite grocery store and get upset when they change the location of items. Story 118. Huh? I'm sorry. I can't hear you. I need my glasses. Story 119. I see kids feeling nostalgic for things that are only 7 or 8 years old. It reminds me how far away 1990 seemed in 2000 when I graduated. Story 120. The first time I heard a song from my teenage years on a classic hits radio station, I sat there wondering how it happened so fast. Story 121. Kids unironically refer to 1997 as the late 1900s. Story 122. The fact that I had to have a knee replaced at the age of 43. Story 123. I want cleaning products or household items as gifts. For my birthday this year, I asked for oven mitts and kitchen towels. My Amazon wishlist is 80% household items or essentials, 15% for my dogs, and 5% for myself. Story 124. When my back begins hurting for no reason and I cannot stay up past midnight, that is when it hits. It becomes even more real when I realize I am using phrases my parents used to say. It is a rough wake-up call. Story 125. Sometimes I can't tell that artificial intelligence is taking over, and I hate it. Story 126. I cannot sustain the energy to do as many things as I did when I was younger. For example, during the Boxing Day sales, I would start after an hour's sleep, work from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., go home tired but alert, and be able to return to work the next day without issue. I worked in fashion retail in a busy, affordable clothing store in London. I would finish my earlier shift on Christmas Eve, get most of my Christmas shopping done in the late afternoon, then return to the store at 6 p.m. for a mandatory shift and work until 1 a.m. marking down clothing. On Christmas Day, I would walk an hour each way to my relative's house because they had been drinking and could not drive, and taxi prices in London on Christmas Day were very high. I now cannot even face the Boxing Day shops for a few hours, let alone start at 9 a.m. and work until closing. There was often a tube strike back then, so I would walk most of the journey. I have no idea how I managed that. Today, Christmas Day alone wears me out. I am not able to take on shopping and wrapping. I now need most of Christmas Eve to wrap about 4 presents. Back then it would be about 12 and I wrapped everything in the early hours of Christmas morning. I wonder how I ever got anything done when these days I can barely manage to get out of bed in one piece. I used to think it was about stamina. I believed that if I pushed myself more I would regain the ability to burn the candle at both ends. Instead, I exhausted myself mentally and was diagnosed with several health conditions. I felt as if my body was forcing me to stop, even though I was doing as much as some people I know. I guess I have to accept my limitations and that we are not all built the same. Story 127. Knowing that the Wii will be considered retro in less than a year. Story 128. I am finding it difficult to urinate when I really have to. Damned prostate. Story 129. I live with chronic illnesses that have left me disabled. I am 28 now. I pray that one day I will be athletic again and able to play sports with my son. Story 130. On weekends, I usually stay home, and I get excited when I go grocery shopping. Story 131. Well, just today I mentioned something to my wife about Columbia House, and it occurred to me that I was an old piece of shit. Story 132. I'm losing patience with dealing with technology. New phones are no longer fun. They just feel like work. Story 133. People do not use compact discs anymore. Even vinyl records are more popular now. Story 134. When I joked about the show Alf, he did not know who Alf was. Story 135. Always tired, even after what seemed to be a good night of sleep. Story 136. Mainly it is the distance from my year of birth to the current year. Story 137. Kids these days and their stupid 67 meme. Back in my day we had 11 on 3, which made sense because it was actually cool. Story 138. Many video games feel overwhelming to me now because there is so much happening on the screen. Story 139. As a senior, I accepted long ago that I am growing old. There are surprises along the way. The hardest part is seeing more of the people I love become ill with conditions such as cancer or dementia and pass away. Some die slowly, others die suddenly. When I catch up with old friends and acquaintances, I often hear stories of illness and loss. There was a large age gap between my parents and me, and I listened to them talk about this. Of course, it is different to experience it myself. Story 140. Hearing people say that an athlete who is younger than I am is washed up. Story 141. One of the kids I used to babysit in the 2010s now has a beard like David Grohl. A Power Rangers toy I got for my birthday in 1995 is now being re-released as a retro collectible. Story 142. The day you are peacefully sitting at an intersection, waiting for your turn, you look at the car next to you and are startled at how young the driver is. You even say out loud that there is no way that child is old enough to drive. Story 143. 1. Kids these days say this. 2. They also say it is not like it used to be. 3. Time flies so fast. Story 144. Reading the names of the nominees for the Grammy Awards and not recognizing most of them. Story 145. I am going to be really simple about this. My fucking back hurts. I am not even 30 yet. Oh God, please. Story 146. My back went out the other day. You would ask that at a time like this. Story 147. I realize it is not an outlandish thought that I might be in perimenopause. Story 148. When a girl or woman adds an A to the end of words they say, like Stopa, Noah, and Danta. I heard my 5-year-old granddaughter say it and nipped it in the bud right away. Story 149. I have random aches and pains. If I stop doing basic maintenance like yoga and getting my heart rate up, I pay for it. Cold and heat feel harsher, and I adapt more slowly to them. Last winter we added an extra blanket because it was cold. That caused me to point my toes more than usual, which somehow sprained my ankle, and I could not walk for 2 days. I was not even 40. Story 150. Anytime I find myself thinking that I don't understand why young people act as they do, it is not just a cranky attitude. It is also seeing young people as a group I am not part of. Story 151. I still write checks for city bills, vehicle registration, and taxes because I deem these important to maintain a paper trail. Story 152. I can't tolerate most people. I am happy when plans are canceled so I can stay home. I am experiencing the loss of more loved ones. Story 153. I am 39 and went to the doctor to get pain medication for my groin pain. I thought I had torn or pulled something. I have bilateral osteonecrosis and need both hips replaced. Story 154. When I was 13, I got along better with my teachers than with my classmates. I could talk about Pink Floyd and 1970s and 1980s movies for hours with almost any teacher, but I could not connect with kids my own age. I found one boy who talked with me, but he was struggling with his sexuality and by the end he tried to stab me. That was not the worst of my trauma, and neither of us were in a place to handle it. Earlier, when I attended Sunday school, I stopped going and became an atheist because others called me the Antichrist for my disposition and for trauma responses that were described as mature for my age. I feel ancient. Story 155. I feel old when my nephew calls me auntie. I find a gray hair in my eyebrow. I have random body pains. Teenagers annoy me. Someone says 1999 is 26 years ago, or I find my early teen pictures. Story 156. Seeing celebrities I grew up watching in movies look old makes me think, damn. Story 157. I know more of the songs on the oldies radio stations, and my knees and hips hurt more than they used to. Story 158. Simply enjoying rock and roll and related music genres seems totally alien to younger generations. Story 159. Seeing a picture of Robert Smith on The Cure's most recent tour was upsetting. It's hard to ignore reality when a beloved icon is aging so visibly right in front of you. I'm still 25, right? Story 160. Body pain and how stupid I find fades and other things that younger generations like. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.